What's going on? Welcome back to Financial Journey. So today we're going to talk to you about NIO. I want to go over some expectations for this upcoming week, what might cause some volatility in the stock price, and go over everything else you need to know. But first, make sure to hit that thumbs up, and with that, let's get right to it. So NIO did go down 3.34% on Friday. So the market was pricing in the newly announced tariffs. So in case you don't know, it was previously 10%, did get tacked on to or increased to 20%. Market doesn't like that type of unexpected pieces of news, so that's what caused a hell of a lot of volatility, a low of $4.43. So going forward, we do know that's a very strong support. So I'll go over technicals and stuff like that, but as far as Friday, I feel like now that 20% tariff is incorporated in the price. Looking forward into this upcoming week, so you do have a couple big data points both in China as well as the States, and as I've mentioned in the past, technically I bring up American data only because it does affect NIO through algorithmic trading. But you have manufacturing data on Monday, and then you also have ADP employment change, and that is on Wednesday. You have also right over here Thursday the typical stuff, so non-farm payroll, a couple of Fed speakers as well through the week. Friday you have unemployment and then non-farm payroll, and then at the end you are capping it with Powell. So definitely should be a very fun week ahead. Aside from that though, looking at China, you just had manufacturing data coming out last Friday, so February the 28th after hours. Actual was 50.2, forecast was 50, so slightly better than anticipated. So it's nothing really crazy that you need to go out and buy Chinese stocks because of that data, only because again it wasn't that big of an increase for the most part. Still above 50, so anything above 50 does show more of an expansion occurring within the broader market, so it's still good data, don't get me wrong, but nothing as crazy as the last report, if that kind of makes sense. Aside from that, you have a couple conferences. You have also inflation rate and data that is coming out on Saturday, March the 8th. So there might be some speculation associated to that. Then obviously trade, so exports, imports, that is on Thursday, March the 6th. So potentially a lot of things that could move the market, but NIO just announced their February numbers. And I think that definitely will be one big thing that will move NIO. So looking right here, so NIO provides February 2025 delivery update. So they did deliver 13,192 vehicles in February 2025, increasing 62.2% year over year. And so they did, of that breakdown, 9,143 from NIO and then 4,049 from Onvo. So that, in my opinion, isn't good whatsoever. And yes, technically they did have the new year, so it was shut down. Pretty much nothing was happening from the end of January to February the 5th, but still 5 days isn't enough to justify this. So in my opinion, this is going to prompt a most likely another retest of this low right here, because that data is not good. And unless they pull a rabbit out of a hat, I don't think that they will be hitting their March targets. But what do I know? Interesting point though, even though they did announce this, they did not announce the date of their earnings. So historically, they have had it at the beginning of March. So it looks like they're breaking trend a little bit, so maybe it could be later. In the past, they do announce it and it's pretty much a couple days later, so it's not, they don't give a huge amount of warning to investors, but still I was under the impression, at least I would have guessed, it would have been announced last week, the date of their earnings at least. But who knows, maybe it'll come this week, but it's definitely they're breaking trend a little bit. So let me know your thoughts on that, as well as these delivery numbers. Do you think that there's a valid excuse for because of the Chinese New Year holiday, or do you think that it's, I don't know, that they're pretty much going to miss on their March numbers? So what's your general thoughts? But going into this upcoming week though, 14.42% of the free float is being shorted. Works out to be 192.62 million shares overall are being shorted. So shorts have definitely been doubling down quite a lot over the last little bit. Not necessarily Friday. So Friday shorts did return 1.36 million shares. So how I interpret this is shorts returning on that very red day kind of signals that they felt like it wasn't justified. So again, there's that. But at the same time, you do see some signs of manipulation. So the cost to borrow minimum has been negative, so negative 0.06, and it's been like that for a while now. I'm not really sure why, but that does mean that there is a broker out there physically paying people to short NIO. It's nothing crazy because that's an annual rate, so it's pretty much flat for the most part, but still it's definitely showing some sketchiness is happening behind the scenes. Moving on from here though, looking at the options, so the open interest, so you did have some, so with it closing ultimately at $4.63, that does mean that the 23,000 at that 450 is in the money. So come Monday, you could see a little bit of a pop associated to that, but at the same time, I feel like the market might be selling off a little bit because of their February numbers. So they might counter each other a little bit, but we'll just have to wait and see. Technically, market makers would have to cover this. So it works out to be around 2.3 million shares, essentially. But looking forward into this upcoming week, you have 7,000 at that 350, 13,000 at that 4, 22,000 at that 450, and then 26,000 at that 5. So come Friday, if NIO does get close to one of those strike prices, you could see shorts get a little bit more active to try to manipulate it down, as what we've seen in the past. But still something to take note of. If somehow NIO, for whatever reason, does really start to appreciate and move higher and does get above that $5 range, this is where once again you could see a little bit of a gamma squeeze. So let me know your general thoughts on that in the comments below. With it at $4.63, trading between this R1 and the pivot, 441 is going to be a strong support. As I mentioned, it was tested on Friday, and even prior to that, it was kind of the pivot point. So in general, I think that's a very strong support, at least going forward, and most likely that will be tested on Monday, despite the market makers having to cover those options. So that's just my estimate, of course. I could be wrong, could be doing the inverse, could just go up to the moon to $6, but again, it is what it is. Flip side, 476 and then 497 are going to be the next strong target / resistance points. But moving on from here though, on the actual chart itself, so with it at $4.60 and change, or 463, it is trading right between these 2 points, so right below that 100-day moving average, and that is sitting at $4.74. Aside from that, you also do have that 200-day moving average at 475, so that is a very tight-knit resistance level. So definitely NIO needs to have some good institutional buying to really push it above that, to really break higher and see higher highs. So once again, just kind of take note of some of the support and resistance points based on the fib levels, as well as the general moving averages. 50-day moving average, on a side note, is at $4.37. So that generally, as well, as a pretty big pivot for NIO. So anything below that usually results in like a 30% swing. Flip side, as long as it can stay above it, then in theory, the trend will still continue to move higher. So moral of the story, Friday, or at least this upcoming week, it's going to be a lot of volatility, and yeah, it's going to be a fun ride. But at least NIO did break above that 50-day moving average, and so far for 3 consecutive days has stayed above it. So I think that's kind of monumental in among itself. It hasn't done that since last September, so it's actually showing some signs of wanting to move higher. Just like I've mentioned in previous videos, I think that just NIO is unfortunate, very unlucky, only because NIO finally was gaining some pretty good momentum, and then Trump hits tariffs, obviously kills some momentum. I feel like it does happen with NIO quite a lot. It's just that external factors just kill their momentum for whatever reason. So I don't know, let me know your general thoughts on NIO. Where do you see things going for this upcoming week? Do you think it is going to finally break above 5 and stay there, or do you think that with all the fear there is going to be more kind of suppression? What's your general thoughts? In my opinion, I do feel like it will eventually, upon having a little bit of a pullback, the market pricing in the February numbers, I think it will continue to move higher and flirt around this R1 to R2. I don't see $5 plus coming this upcoming week, only because there's a lot of fear in the broader market and everything else. So let me know your general thoughts. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up and subscribe. I always greatly appreciate that. One final thing, pop over to my Patreon and get buy signals on stocks, options, and crypto. Many of them have been absolutely on point and bangers. Definitely worthwhile to pop over there and take a look. With all that, appreciate all of you watching.